easily manipulated. They are vulnerable to manipulative tactics as simple as charm and provocation. Autistic men have hyper-masculinized brains, lots of exposure to prenatal testosterone. Narcissistic men embody negative masculinity on the outside and negative femininity on the inside. An angry gorilla on the outside, a gossipy 13-year-old girl on the inside. Autists are good at logical reasoning, in part because they aren't ego-invested in their opinions. They have no problem changing their opinion or their view of reality, if evidence is brought forth indicating it is wrong. Autists are quick to change their opinion when presented with new information that contradicts it. Narcissistic men are simultaneously volatile, yet also predictable. Simply ask yourself, what would the stereotypical high school bully do? And you thereby know what a narcissistic man would do. Illimitable Man once said this. Part 3. Psychopathic men are very different from narcissistic men. While narcissists are egotistical, arrogant on the outside and neurotic on the inside, psychopathic men are cold and detached. They experience zero compassion and zero fear. Narcissists are neurotic. Psychopaths are calm. Narcissistic men are far more common than psychopathic men. You will have more narcissistic men in your contact list than you have psychopathic men, simply because they are more common in the general population. Men who are high IQ autists tend to excel in engineering and STEM. Men who are high IQ psychopaths tend to excel in finance, law, and sales. Their incredibly high stress tolerance is an advantage. Their willingness to harm innocent people is an advantage. Their cunning, great social skills, is an advantage. Men who are high IQ psychopaths, and also men who are high IQ narcissists, tend to excel at sales. Psychopaths and narcissists are often very charismatic, good at charming people. Trained ruthlessness pales in comparison to real psychopathy, just as caffeine pales in comparison to cocaine. Oh, fuck. People who are egotistical and/or impulsive should not be entrusted with decision-making responsibilities. Their impulsivity will drive them to make decisions that feel good in the moment, but that have disastrous long-term consequences. Their egotism will drive them to make decisions that stroke their ego, but that are strategically counterproductive. Law 10 Addendum. There are people who make time bombs. Tick, tick, tick. Make sure you are far away before they explode. Don't talk to them. Don't try to persuade them. Don't fight them. Run. If a psychopathic man ever refers to you in the past tense, run. Ambition plus hopelessness equals extreme risk-taking. High testosterone drives ambition. Low testosterone induces hopelessness. Nothing to lose, everything to gain leads to extreme risk-taking. Testosterone fuels ambition. Who has high testosterone? Men. Low serotonin induces feelings of hopelessness. Who has low serotonin? Both men and women at the bottom of dominance hierarchies. Men at the bottom of dominance hierarchies have high testosterone levels and low serotonin levels. They are filled with both ambition and hopelessness. They are the ones who engage in extreme risk-taking, risks that look insane to most people, but that are perfectly sane if you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. How a person reacts to finding out that the future is hopeless tells you a lot about their character. Some go into denial. They ignore reality. Some blindly work hard as if somehow their effort will save them. Some start executing every high-risk, high-reward strategy available, with the logic that they have nothing to lose and everything to gain. If you have been informed that the future is hopeless, do not wither away and die. Go out in a blaze of glory. Having nothing to lose may be a miserable position to be in, but it is also an immensely powerful position to be in. You are enabled to execute high-risk strategies nobody else can, because you can honestly say, I have nothing to fear. Some of the very spiritually painful experiences. Watching your future evaporate before your eyes. Losing a friend to suicide. Being a boy raised fatherless. High IQ psychopaths tend to have very good impulse control. Low IQ psychopaths have terrible impulse control. High IQ psychopaths are exceptionally good at manipulating people, high cunning. Will become a successful financier, lawyer, or salesman. Low IQ psychopath will impulsively engage in violence and spend his life in and out of prison. The more emotionally attached to her you are, the more likely you are to make tactically counterproductive decisions when dealing with her. The higher your oxytocin levels when dealing with a woman, the more likely you are to make tactical mistakes when dealing with her. Psychopathic men almost never make tactical errors when managing romantic relationships with women. Why? Because they have zero emotional attachment to the women they are romantically involved with. Stilted speech, lots of pauses, correlates with psychopathy. If he has stilted speech and is high cunning, he's a psychopath. Yes, stilted speech also correlates with autism. A notable difference is that psychopaths tend to be very cunning, while autists are not cunning at all, i.e. incapable of reading body language, vocal tonality, social cues, are socially awkward, etc. Brazen signs of psychopathy. A willingness to harm others without hesitation and without remorse. Subtle signs of psychopathy. High stress tolerance, no fear. Cold eyes, stilted speech. Most high IQ psychopaths are capable of concealing the one brazen sign of psychopathy. They can't conceal the 3 listed subtle signs of psychopathy. What do Bill Clinton and Frank Underwood have in common? High IQ psychopaths and competent presidents. The more emotional someone is, the easier it is to manipulate them. High extroversion or enthusiasm makes one very susceptible to positive emotion. High neuroticism, low stress tolerance, makes one very susceptible to negative emotion. People who are high extroversion, enthusiastic, and high neuroticism are very easy to manipulate since they are very emotional. Lots of positive emotion that can be manipulated, and lots of negative emotion. They have plenty of emotion that can be manipulated. People who are low extroversion, unenthusiastic, and low neuroticism, high stress tolerance, are very difficult to manipulate. They aren't very emotional, and as such, there's not a lot of emotion that can be manipulated. No lies. If you are a man who is politically right-wing authoritarian, the probability you can't seduce women is 0. On one hand, whenever someone asks, "Corporate Machiavelli, are you a psychopath?" I say no, because I want to view myself as a hero. On the other hand, whenever I talk to a high IQ psychopath, it does feel like I'm looking in the mirror. Outward signs of psychopathy: no fear, no compassion, no sadness, cold eyes, stilted speech, not bothered at all by conflicts or even violence. America has a Gini coefficient of 50%. The wealth inequality has become insanely intense. Intense inequality has negative side effects, including higher homicide rates, lower social trust, more polarized politics, higher risk of civil war or violent revolution. In 2021 America, it is necessary to raise taxes on billionaires to de-intensify the wealth inequality. Ideal economic structure: free market capitalists to create wealth, government spending for infrastructure, roads and bridges, electrical grid, the internet, etc. Enough wealth redistribution to ensure that the people at the bottom are not in a constant state of despair. The ideal way to do wealth redistribution is to have the government fund infrastructure that benefits 100% of the population, including poor people. Example: universalized healthcare. As of 2020, Denmark has something resembling the ideal economic structure just mentioned. If you make it high enough within the financial industry, or within the corporate world more generally, you will be approached by intelligence operatives asking for favors. Give them what they want. In almost all cases, the cost of helping them is a minor inconvenience, while the cost of refusing to help them can be astronomical. In the words of my former MD, "You're just a small player in this game. Play your part, son." MK Ultra. In the 1950s and 60s, the American Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, was kidnapping US citizens and testing out torture techniques on them to see which interrogation techniques are the most effective. This raises the question: if that's what they were doing in the 50s and 80s, what are they doing today? It is impossible to overstate how big of an advantage psychopaths get when it comes to performance from having a stress tolerance bordering infinity. A sky-high stress tolerance is not a small advantage or a secondary factor. It is an enormous advantage. Very often the make or break factor in determining whether one succeeds or fails. Just because you can do something does not mean you understand how that thing is done. Just because you have succeeded in a domain does not mean you understand how that domain works. Everyone can breathe. Very few people, pulmonologists, actually understand how the lungs work. There are plenty of engineers who excel within engineering because they have sky-high visuospatial IQs. Most of them do not understand what IQ is, or that visuospatial IQ is the make or break factor in engineering talent. Many say things like, "IQ isn't real." They are capable of excelling in engineering, yet they have zero understanding of what it is that enables them to excel in engineering. There are plenty of good-looking men like myself who are good at seduction, who will say, "Women care about your personality. How good-looking you are doesn't matter," which is bollocks. See Mark Manson. This is false. How good-looking you are matters a lot for seduction. They are capable of seducing women, yet they have zero understanding of what it is that enables them to excel at seduction. He who is the best at doing a thing, and he who has the most deep and accurate understanding of how that thing is done, are often two separate people. To be a great executor and to be a great analyzer are two separate abilities. They do correlate positively, but they are not the same. Knowing a person better than they know themselves is a very low bar, since most people have close to zero self-awareness. Most women don't realize they are hypergamous. Most smart men don't realize they are smart. They don't realize most people are significantly dumber than them. Most narcissistic men don't realize they are narcissistic. If you are a rich person in a first world country, from 1970 to 2020, the two biggest reasons for this are that you were born in a first world country and that you have a high IQ. Both of these things, country of birth and IQ, are 100% luck. No rich person wants to hear, your success can be almost entirely explained by factors that are 100% luck. But it is the truth. Corporate Machiavelli? What can you buy as a billionaire that you can't buy right now? Congressmen, senators, governors, presidents, judges. A quote from Balthazar Gracian: "Never compete against a man who has nothing to lose." End quote. Freedom is a great word for rhetoric. It is a word that is positive and vague. Every potential supporter can imagine freedom as meaning whatever it is they want it to mean. Law 47 Addendum. A quote from Balthazar Gracian: "Do not wait until you are a sinking sun." End quote. Nobody is great forever. Every successful person ends up retired or dead sooner or later. Quit while you are ahead. Retire while you are at the pinnacle of your career. Don't stick around to decline. Never initiate conflict with someone you know nothing about. A quote from Sun Tzu: "Know your enemy." End quote. Making an enemy out of someone you know nothing about is foolish. Yes, this sounds obvious, but every day people initiate conflicts with complete strangers, manufacturing enemies they know nothing about. "I initiated conflict with a man and insulted him. When I did this, I didn't know his last name or his net worth or how well connected he is, or whether or not he has both senators and the governor on speed dial." You would never foolishly do something like this, would you? If you are a high IQ autist considering going into engineering or STEM, you could excel there. If you are a high IQ psychopath, consider going into finance, law and sales. You could excel there. If you work in engineering, the probability that you have a high IQ autist in your contact list is 100%. If you work in finance or law, the probability that you have a high IQ psychopath in your contact list is 100%. A quote from Illimitable Man: "High IQ, low narcissism psychopath types like Vladimir Putin make for good leaders. The I'm an alpha, you're a beta crowd do not." End quote. High IQ psychopaths are master strategists and tacticians. Narcissists are not. Narcissists often make tactical mistakes because they will do things that stroke their ego but that are tactically counterproductive, and they refuse to do things that would be tactically beneficial because those things would offend their ego. Narcissism, ego, is a tactical liability because narcissists will prioritize their ego over doing what is tactically effective. Psychopaths who are not narcissistic don't have this problem. They will take whatever course of action is most tactically effective, regardless of whether it strokes or offends their ego. To give an example, a high IQ psychopath would have no problem applying Law 1 when dealing with a superior. However, a narcissist would have difficulty applying Law 1. Narcissists instinctively shine as bright as possible, even if it means outshining their master. If, when walking down the street, a random man insults you, what is the correct thing to do? Ignore the insult and walk away? Why not fight? You have nothing to gain by arguing with him, much less engaging in a fistfight with him. Winning the fistfight and cabbaging the stupid cunt means spending the night in jail. Losing the fistfight means spending the night in the hospital. Neither outcome is good. Escalating the conflict would be an all-downside, no-upside bet. A brazenly stupid course of action. A narcissistic man will escalate the conflict because his ego compels him to do so. A rational man, say a psychopath who is not egotistical or a neurotypical man who is not egotistical, will walk away without hesitation. Narcissistic men want status. Psychopathic men want power. The difference between status and power is often subtle, but they are distinct. A quote from Francesco Guicciardini describing modern America. All regimes are mortal. A man living in the final stage of his society's existence should not feel as sorry for his country as he should for himself. What happened to his country was inevitable, but to be born at a time when his civilization was collapsing was his own bad luck. End quote. Narcissistic men usually stand out like a sore thumb. They instinctively care a great deal about their physical appearance, and often dress with a style that is flashy. They stand out in the visual sense. Their extroversion and their desire for attention also make them stand out. Psychopathic men are usually masters of blending in. They are very good at concealing their psychopathy. Most people who know them would report that they are normal and likable. Nothing particularly unusual about their personality. The only outward signs of psychopathy you are likely to see: cold eyes, incredibly high stress tolerance, ruthless indifference. Cold eyes. In their eyes there is energy, but no soul. The lights are on, but nobody is home. Incredibly high stress tolerance. In situations that would make most people panic, they are cool as a cucumber. Ruthless indifference. For most people, harming another person involves intense emotions. It requires them to be angry or resentful. If they harm someone else for their own gain when they are not angry or resentful, it produces feelings of regret and pain. For a psychopath, harming others is an emotionless experience. If you see a man inflict harm upon others without being angry or resentful beforehand, and without feeling any regret or pain because of it afterwards, there is a high probability he is psychopathic. The hallmark of psychopathy is cold indifference, ruthlessness, harming others without feeling any emotion at all. Psychopaths aren't angry or sadistic, they are just indifferent. The most famous high IQ psychopath on the planet is Vladimir Putin. Notice he exhibits all three of the outward signs of psychopathy noted previously: cold eyes, incredible stress tolerance, ruthless indifference. Autistic men stand out. When you interact with an autist, it's obvious within the first 60 seconds of interaction that their personality isn't normal. They are clearly an outlier, hopelessly socially awkward, not cunning at all. Autistic men are easy to detect. Narcissistic men are easy to detect, but not as much as autistic men. Psychopathic men are hard to detect. You usually don't notice them until you feel a knife in your back. Narcissists tend to not be very intellectually curious. Narcissists care intensely about worldly wealth, money, power, status. They care intensely about being as good-looking as me, physically attractive. However, unlike me, they tend to find things like philosophy boring. You will never meet a narcissistic man who thinks that the works of Nietzsche and Socrates are interesting. Autistic men seem to be the opposite in this regard. Most autistic men are far less interested in worldly wealth than the average person. They claim not to desire wealth, power, or status. They claim that they are interested in technological innovation and scientific advancement. It would seem that they are telling the truth. A narcissistic billionaire like Donald Trump is interested in maximizing his own power. To such a man, there is no higher goal than to become President of the United States, reaching the pinnacle of the macro-dominance hierarchy. An autistic billionaire like Elon Musk isn't primarily motivated by enhancing his own power. His primary mission is to change the world through technological innovation, self-driving cars, solar power, space travel. It seems that autism is a vaccine against narcissism. You will never encounter an autistic person who is narcissistic. Autism and narcissism seem to be mutually exclusive psychological conditions. Narcissism and psychopathy are not mutually exclusive. Many men are both psychopathic and narcissistic. Ted Bundy and Jordan Belfort are men who are both narcissistic and psychopathic. Vladimir Putin is a man who is psychopathic, but not narcissistic.